Hi, so good to be back with you here in the in between. My name is Camille. If this is your first video, of course, I want to welcome you to the very special space between what was and what is yet to be. And as we've been walking the terrain of change, we've learned that it's also the place between who we were and who we are becoming. So if this is your first video, I also want to add the link to the playlist in the description below so that you can walk the terrain of change with us. You can walk the in-between alongside our walk and experience with us the 5 areas of change. Because now we are revisiting those 5 areas with renewed curiosity, perhaps a bit more of a mindful awareness of things that we simply could not wrap our heads around while just trying to survive the change that we've been going through. We are on the cusp of moving into the 3rd area of change that I call the helpers. But before we go, I did want to spend a few more minutes talking about the uniqueness of these first 2 areas of change, because they are the axis of the in-between. The change cycle, which navigates the actual experiences of change, from being cracked open to having a breakthrough and everything in between. And then the inner landscape, which takes us on the journey of what we are experiencing inside of ourselves as we go through the change cycle. Most people just stop there, and it's understandable because change can be so overwhelming that we become paralyzed, and all we're trying to do is stay afloat and land on our feet, we hope. The other thing that happens is we get saddled with so many emotions and we don't quite know how to navigate them. Plus, it can also be a depressing time when our spirit gets pressed down by the intensity of the change that we're going through. However, here in the in-between, we feel fortunate because we now know that beyond those 2 massive experiences that we walk through when we go through change, uncertainty, and rebirth, there are the helpers, there are guides, and there is guidance in both the physical, experienced world as well as the invisible world that are there to assist us as we're going through the journey of change. The inner landscape and the change cycle are revolving doors. As I've said many times, this is not a linear journey. It's very normal and natural to be having multiple experiences of the change cycle at the same time. That's what makes the in-between so sacred, so mysterious, and incredibly messy and confusing and uncomfortable. But because we were willing to walk it the best that we could, now that we've come back around to it, now that we can revisit it with a little bit more calmness and not so much chaos, we are willing to see what else does the in-between have nestled in its layers. And turns out it's a tremendous amount of wisdom and relief that not only is the change cycle universal, not only does everybody go through it, not only is the inner landscape another universal experience of what we feel inside ourselves as we're walking through change, but we're also reminded that it is a place we come back to over and over and over again in our lives. The revolving door of life always revolves itself back around change. And so, again, if you haven't yet walked the in between from the beginning to the end, I invite you to do so. And maybe you have, but you're being called to go back and check out a few videos that even you could not take in at the time because of your own personal inner landscape and what it was that you were experiencing. Or maybe you want to go back to the beginning of this new series in which we are recognizing ourself in the in-between, so that as we do, we're able to bring more awareness, more mindfulness, more compassion. We're able to go into our toolbox and pull out some of the tools that we are now mindfully understanding exist and are available to us when we remember them. If you watched my last video on death and dying, you know I've been through the in-between yet again. It came upon me very, very quickly, as it sometimes does. That's why there's an aspect in the change cycle called sacred disruption. Oftentimes, nothing sacred about the disruption while it's happening. But because we are revisiting the change cycle and the inner landscape, and because we are bringing a greater awareness and a greater curiosity to what we're like when we are in those two profound experiences, the change cycle and the inner landscape, we have this increased ability and capacity to detach almost from the person that we are that's going through it to the person who's observing ourselves going through it and is in a position to be a helper as well. For example, when I was going through the sacred disruption of my friend getting sick, my friend passing away, doing the celebration of life for another friend just a few days before that, and so many other disruptions that were all happening at the same time, there did come a moment in my overwhelm where my head was just hurting so much. It felt like it was being squeezed, as was my heart. I realized that was happening. And I thought, oh my goodness, here it is. I'm in the change cycle. I am experiencing the inner landscape of that change cycle. And in that moment, I was able to bring greater compassion to myself, which helped. It didn't take away what I was going through. It didn't even diminish the intensity of my feelings as I was at the bedside of my friend who was dying. But it did help me be there with a greater sense of sacredness. It did help me be there when it was incredibly uncomfortable, because I've been practicing sitting in the discomfort of discomfort. Too often we want out when we are feeling uncomfortable. We want to numb it. We have all sorts of strategies to ignore it, deny it, and push it away. But in the new design model, we don't do that. In the new design model, we're here to sit in the center of what's difficult. We're here to hold the space for ourselves while our hearts are breaking. We're here to stretch the canvas of our life wide enough to include the joy and the sorrow, the mysterious and the mystical, the difficulty and the tenderness of being human and living this life. One thing is for sure, the in-between reminds us that all of this is impermanent. Everything comes and goes. We have it 1 minute, and then the next minute, it's gone. And as you re-walk the terrain of transformation, what I hope that you're realizing is that what becomes so precious in the truth of that is our ability to be mindful, our ability to be awake, to be aware, to be present for each and every moment as it unfolds. And so the change cycle and the inner landscape are just so incredibly precious to me. They help us remember that change is actually part of the human experience. And so are all the feelings that we feel when we're going through just that, especially those feelings that have been often pushed aside and devalued by the old design model. We're told to avoid confusion, get out of chaos as quickly as possible, right? Know what you're doing and where you're going. No, that's actually not always the way it is. We have redefined confusion. We have allowed ourselves to sit in the center of uncertainty long enough for that which is certain to reveal itself to us. We recognize that not every season is for blooming, that sometimes you truly don't know, nor should you, because it's not time yet, either because the fullness of the knowing has not yet arrived, or perhaps you yourself are not yet ready for the fullness of clarity or truth or information. We come to a point where we trust what we can't see, because finally we believe that no matter how difficult life is, it's for us. In the old design model, we showed up with our victim cards. Life is happening to us, and there's nothing I can do about it. And we have a whole story built around that. In the new design model, we've burned our victim cards and we've stepped into the full power of our role of the co-creator of our own lives, and learning how to walk with change, learning how to reimagine the human experience so that we can be aligned with it, so we can bring compassion to it and ourselves, reconsidering what transformation is really all about and why right now so many of us are going through identity change at a core level is what this beautiful series is all about. And no one is more surprised than I am. I've been with this content since 2016, 10 years, and still to this day, the in-between reveals to me more and more and more of what I never saw before. And it has my total respect. And I'm in awe. I'm in awe at the unbounded wisdom that life offers us. And as we are about to learn, the unconditional love and support that is always there when we take the time to look for it and then acknowledge it. Up next, we'll revisit the helpers. Thanks so much for watching.